Welcome, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. So we have a packed house and a ton of content to cover. We're currently at about 270 attendees and climbing. I expect that to grow significantly. This, from a registration perspective, has been one of our most successful events thus far. So really excited to go over all this content with all of you. Before we dive in, I'd like to go over some housekeeping notes to ensure that we all have the best possible webinar experience. You might have already noticed that we're using GoToMeeting to stream this live webinar. Please familiarize yourself with the interface. It's a best practice to turn off any other applications while watching the webinar. It'll help ensure a smooth streaming experience. And although we'll cover questions at the end of the webinar, we do have moderators from HubDoc, ScanSnap, Expensify, and Xero available in the chat. They'll do their best to answer product-specific questions as they come up or pass them off to me during the Q&A section. And lastly, but most importantly, as it goes with all webinars, let's try to have some fun and hopefully we could all learn something. Oh, and one final note, notice a few questions already coming into the chat. We will be providing a recorded version of the webinar after the webinar, as well as all of the slides that we'll be covering. And if you're active on Twitter, feel free to hashtag GGDB throughout the presentation. If you're asking yourself, what does GGDP mean? Well, effectively, when we started this whole journey, instead of calling it the How I Learned Cloud Bookkeeping campaign, it was Geoffrey Gualano Does Bookkeeping. And we wanted to stay close to our roots in how we communicate on social. So feel free to use the hashtag going forward. So to kick this off, I'd like to introduce myself and provide some additional context as to why we're all here. My name is Geoffrey, and I'm the Senior Product Marketing Manager at HubDoc. Essentially, I'm in charge of bringing products and features to market. So for example, if you've heard about our integration with Xero HQ, whether on our blog, social channels, email, or through a publication, it probably came from product marketing. I've been a product marketer for the better part of 3 years, 9 months of which have been at HubDoc. And as you probably already know, because you're registered for this webinar, I'm also HubDoc's interim bookkeeper, or at least I have been for the last 6 months. My main responsibilities as bookkeeper are the following. So I manage accounts payable, expense reporting, and bank reconciliation. We work with an outsourced bookkeeper and accounting firm to cover accounts receivable, payroll, tax, and advisory services. Now you're probably asking yourself, why is a marketer doing HubDoc's bookkeeping? Surely they have a network of great accounting and bookkeeping firms that can do the work. Yes, very true. We're fortunate to work with some of the world's best firms. And as mentioned previously, we do work with an outsourced bookkeeper and accounting firm. That being said, we believe that there's a tremendous amount of value in having a member of our team learn how to do our own bookkeeping. Why? Well, because HubDoc is a cloud accounting application, and our aim is to help accountants and bookkeepers save time by automatically fetching their clients' key financial documents, things like bank statements, bills, receipts, and invoices, for payment processing, bank reconciliation, and audit proofing. So to better serve our customers, accounting and bookkeeping firms, and the small businesses they serve, we believe that it's really important to put ourselves in their shoes. We want to experience their day-to-day processes and challenges. That'll help us develop relevant solutions, things that people can really get behind. It's a tradition that was started by our co-CEO, Jamie McDonald, and that has since been handed down to our head of product, Dan Shiner, and now it's my turn. So this is probably a pretty accurate high-level overview of my last 6 months as HubDoc's bookkeeper. When I started this experience, I knew next to nothing. Today, not only do I have a better understanding and appreciation for the role of bookkeeper, I can confidently leverage cloud accounting apps to collect financial documents, process payments, approve and reimburse employee expenses, and complete bank reconciliation. And because of cloud accounting technology, which provides me and everyone here with real-time access to data from anywhere, I was able to do the job from Italy for 3 weeks, which is like a really, really awesome experience. And it allowed me to understand the value of the cloud in a real world experience. Now, it's not all roses and rainbows. this experience hasn't come without its challenges. I learned that being a real bookkeeper is hard. There are so many nuances and tax implications that without real world experience and expertise, it's easy to make mistakes. I know because I've made more than a few. And as I'm sure everyone in this webinar knows, the cost of making a mistake in the world of bookkeeping is really high. That being said, the second lesson was that learning how to implement and leverage cloud accounting technology was a lot easier than I thought it would be. In fact, that's probably been the easiest part of this process. And that was the inspiration for our How I Learned Cloud Bookkeeping series. You're probably thinking, leave it to a marketer to create a campaign about their day-to-day. But in all seriousness, we thought to ourselves, we can't be the only ones wanting to learn how to implement and leverage cloud accounting technologies and workflows. Why not document the experience, the ups, the downs, the everything in between, and then help people that are newly transitioning to the cloud learn from our experiences, or provide some inspiration for cloud vets, people who already have a well-documented workflow as well as a tech stack that's running really well. We partnered with Fujitsu ScanSnap that provide powerful cloud scanners enabling paperless practices in businesses. Xero, as you all know, the cloud accounting superstars. Expensify, which provides simplified expense management and reporting, and Bill.com, which helps firms achieve automated payment processing, to bring you this series. So not only are these apps partners from a content perspective and from a corporate perspective, but they're also a part of our actual bookkeeping tech stack. We realize that not all tech stacks are the same. They can change from firm to firm, and sometimes even client to client. Which is why we work with different apps every few quarters to battle test our integrations and workflows. That being said, this tech stack, the one that you see here, HubDoc, Fujitsu ScanSnap, Xero, Expensify, and Bill.com, and the subsequent workflows that they allow us to achieve have really helped us optimize our internal bookkeeping process. This webinar is going to dive deep into the how. So in today's webinar, I'll show you the tools and resources I use to learn cloud bookkeeping. I'll talk about our workflow, why it's so important, and how to develop and optimize your own. I'll go over our tech stack in more depth, as well as how it fits in our workflow. And last but not least, I'll provide a demo of the whole experience. So let's get into it. Like I mentioned previously, bookkeeping isn't easy, or at least it wasn't easy for me when I first got started. It takes years of experience to perfect. It took me many hours of training and learning before I even coded, posted, and reconciled my first transaction. That being said, there are so many amazing resources, courses, and certifications that are available online and in person to get you going. To start, I wanted to get a better understanding of bookkeeping, more specifically the why and the how. I used lynda.com to gain my footing. And in case you don't know, lynda.com is an online education company that's owned by LinkedIn, costs no more than $29 a month, and gives you access to a lot of great learning material and content. I registered for the Become a Bookkeeper course, which is a 17-hour course designed to give you a foundational understanding of small business bookkeeping. And the format is a series of digestible videos as well as quizzes to ensure that you understand the content. If you're joining us in this webinar because you might be interested about dipping your toes in bookkeeping, this is a course I would definitely recommend. Once I grasped bookkeeping conceptually, I started learning how to use our cloud accounting applications. So HubDoc, Xero, Expensify, and Bill.com, all of which provide free online certification courses for accountants and bookkeepers. Fujitsu ScanSnap provides a robust help center to answer any questions you may have. So if you're thinking about making the shift to any of these apps, they also have great sales success support teams to get you going. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll send the slides in a follow-up email so that you can easily access these resources. In total, I did about 3 full days of training before ever jumping into real bookkeeping. So bookkeeping workflow, and I think this is still really relevant to how I got up and running. Because it was probably my most leveraged resource in the early days. As a new bookkeeper, our workflow / monthly bookkeeping checklist was my playbook. Yes, I had support from an outsourced bookkeeper and accounting firm, but this is really what helped me get up and running in the early days. The checklist you see here is a template, but it's really not dissimilar to our real checklist. It was created in partnership with Carbon, a workflow management tool, and was inspired by some really amazing cloud accounting and bookkeeping practices. It's available as a free download on our website. And again, we'll be sharing these slides at the end of the webinar so that you could leverage these tools. Another thing that really helped me when I got started was that we document specific situations and scenarios. So this was probably done preemptively before I took over the bookkeeping so that I wouldn't have to ask too many questions. But in reality, that's actually what happened. If I ran into a murky situation, I could reference this document wherever need be, get the answer I needed, and move on without having to check in with our team. So a really fantastic resource for new bookkeepers. But I would say even if you have a well-experienced team, there's always situations that people don't run into on a day-to-day basis. It's a great practice to document those situations so that people can reference them at a later date. What's funny is I've extracted so much value from bookkeeping workflows, but I've heard that less than 15% of accounting and bookkeeping firms have a documented workflow. And just out of curiosity, I'm going to throw up a poll right now to see what percent of our audience falls within that 15%. So I'm going to send that over your way right now. So the question is, do you have a documented workflow? Potential answers is yes, and it's great. Yes, but it can be improved, and not yet. So it's looking like, I'll give it a few more seconds. It's really interesting data. So about 7% of you say, yes, you have a documented workflow, and it's great. 37%, yes, but it can be improved, and 56% not yet, which is kind of what I assumed. You know, if you're joining us in our webinar today, more likely than not, you have a documented workflow, and you're probably looking for ways to improve it, which is really awesome. I'm showing you the results right here so that you can see it for yourself. So I'm going to hide that, and I'm going to get right back into the content. So as you can imagine, I'm a huge fan of a well-documented workflow. Good on you, that 7/8% that have a really great documented workflow. I feel that we have a pretty good one. Not to say that it can't be optimized, but it was really crucial to help me get going. Why is that? Because a well-documented workflow allows you to easily onboard new employees. Like, I'm a perfect example of that. It helps employees complete tasks faster with greater accuracy because there's no ambiguity around what work needs to be done and when. It helps identify inefficiencies that can be solved by better process, people, or technology. And it creates an autonomous environment for staff. So in the context of me getting started, it was really great for my onboarding period, but 6 months later, I still reference the workflow and it still provides me with a ton of value. It helps analyze and improve by setting a process benchmark. I'm going to provide real world anecdotal evidence of this. So things that I experienced as I learned how to be a cloud bookkeeper. And last but not least, it helps inform technology purchasing decisions. But how do you get to this checklist end state? Something that you're really proud of, something that your team executes against, and something that's helping you unlock huge efficiencies at your practice. We recently did a webinar with Carbon and some of our most cloud-forward customers to learn how they got to an efficient bookkeeping workflow. We also used those tips to build our own. The journey to workflow checklist takes time and multiple iterations. One checklist might not work for all your clients. That being said, it should be solid enough that it will only deviate by 15% from customer to customer. It's a best practice to start by mapping out your workflow. You can even start on a piece of paper. I'd go as far as saying that that's probably, the best place to start. It's just a start. It doesn't matter if it's on a napkin, on a piece of paper. Getting over that hurdle is what's going to get you to this eventual outcome. So one of the things that you want to do when you're mapping out your workflow is you want to include the high-level phases, as well as the underlying tasks associated to each phase. So what does that mean? I'm going to give you an example. Let's say my phase is collect and process documents. Within that phase, I'm going to have a subset of tasks. And an example of those tasks can be fetch and upload documents to HubDoc and review, code, and post documents to Xero. Those are the subsequent tasks associated to each phase. And you should do this for every phase associated to the bookkeeping process. Once you have a detailed process map, you should transplant that into a checklist. Document the phase and include the associated tasks. Each task should have a description, owner, status, and average duration. A detailed checklist that has been adopted by your team will increase your practice efficiency. It'll give each staff member a detailed roadmap on what needs to be done and when. It's also a great tool to benchmark your process and identify if the issue is the process itself, people, or technology. For example, in the early days, it was taking me a lot longer to complete tasks than it should have. I only knew this because we included average task duration in our checklist. When analyzing the problem being why am I taking so long to do tasks that shouldn't really be taking me that long, and evaluating if it was due to process, people, or technology, it was easy to see that the problem was me. As you would expect, it was taking me time to get ramped up. But the more I practiced, the more aligned I was with the average task duration. But if that task was taking me a long time and I knew everything that I was doing, then more likely than not, the problem would have been process or technology. So using a checklist is really essential, as I mentioned previously, as a way to benchmark each task so that you can optimize it on a going forward basis. So as it relates to the bookkeeping workflow, we also asked a ton of our customers to provide some tips as you step into your journey to creating a documented workflow or to optimizing your own. One tip, and I think that's really, really important, is get the team involved. It's important to get early buy-in. If you have a well-documented workflow, but nobody is utilizing it, then no one's really extracting value from it and benefiting from the increased efficiency. Be concise. Only include tasks that need to be there. Sometimes people feel the need to add everything in the kitchen sink. Unfortunately, that can be overwhelming and it might be a detractor to being used in an efficient way. Ian Vaxon from Carbon has this great statement as it relates to task owners. If you want to make sure that something doesn't get done, assign 2 task owners. So as a tip, always assign only 1 task owner to each task because that allows you to add accountability. Approximate duration to complete each task. As I mentioned previously, this will help you optimize the workflow on a going forward basis. And outline any task dependencies, things like if this, then that case scenarios. At the moment, our workflow checklist is in a Google Sheet, but there are great tools out there like Carbon and Arrow, for example, to help take your team's workflow to the next level. Not to mention project management tools like Asana and Trello that are really inexpensive and easy to get set up. So now that we have a better understanding of a well-documented workflow, how to create our own, and it's going great. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't be trying to optimize it on a regular basis. So again, we decided to poll a lot of our customers to provide you with some tips on how to optimize your workflow. One tip that I find really interesting is leverage benchmarking studies and surveys to see how you compare/identify gaps. Xero does a really good job at publishing benchmarking studies across their install base. I'd highly recommend leveraging them and seeing kind of like how your firm deviates or where you're the same. Communicate with peers, compare and contrast. This is probably the most valuable piece of advice. People that have a well-documented workflow have stages in the workflow that they're really proud of. Find out what those are and then compare it to yours and try to leverage the learnings because other people have gone through this before. Try to leverage their learnings to improve your workflow. Get continual feedback from your team and clients. This goes without saying, but your team and your clients are probably the ones who are in the workflow on a day-to-day basis. So they're going to be the ones who will have the most meaningful feedback as it relates to how it can be improved. A way that you can get continual feedback is by just having the conversation and asking the question, or larger firms will send out monthly or quarterly surveys to understand how they can improve. Reduce or eliminate paper-based processes, invoices, bills, and checks. So if you have a well-documented workflow, you're executing against it, but you're noticing that there are still stages in the workflow that require a lot of paper-based processes. There are a ton of applications out there that allow you to digitize paper documents, and it really effectively enables you to become a paperless practice or business. Leverage them. This is where technology can take that workflow to the next level. And the same goes for data entry. If there are specific tasks where you're finding that you're doing a lot of data entry or manual tasks, again, a lot of applications out there that'll extract data from documents, saving you a tremendous amount of time so that you can focus on higher value activities and not just kind of like the manual grunt work. So now that we've documented our workflow, let's talk about how our tech stack fits into the fold. Earlier, I mentioned that workflow should inform your purchasing decisions. And I really believe that. But in this context, I'm going to provide you with a high-level overview of how you can go about doing that. So this is a high-level example. What you'll notice here is at HubDoc, my bookkeeping responsibilities include 4 workflow phases. Collecting and processing financial documents, specifically for accounts payable, approving and reimbursing employee expenses, paying bills, and bank reconciliation. In a perfect world, purchasing decisions would also be informed by the subsequent tasks associated to each phase, the challenges that your team is facing on a day-to-day basis, specific client requirements, and a lot more. But assuming that we have all those areas covered and that we're looking to have as much automation and as little paper in our workflow as possible, this is how our workflow phases would inform our tech stack purchasing decisions. So in this context, we'd look for tools to help us collect and process financial documents. There are a ton out there, but as you would imagine, we've selected to use HubDoc and Fujitsu ScanSnap. Approve and reimburse employee expenses. I personally believe that Expensify is one of the best cloud accounting apps out there, and you'll see why in just a moment. Super easy to use for employees as well as for administrators. So we use Bill.com to help us pay bills. Because we're based in Canada, we only use Bill.com to help pay US-based bills. But because of Bill.com's awesome customer approval workflows, as well as the ability to pay bills using our bank accounts, it's really useful and helps us automate that process. And Xero, as I mentioned before, and I'll say it again, cloud accounting superstars for reconciliation of transactions, so the bank reconciliation process, as well as financial reporting, which is, as a business, what allows us to make informed decisions. So before we dive into the demo, I thought it would be helpful to provide a high-level overview of what this technology workflow would look like. First, we use HubDoc and Fujitsu ScanSnap to collect all our accounts payable financial documents. HubDoc, as you would imagine, is the first leg of the race for all our businesses' financial documents, whether that's a bank statement, bill, receipt, or an invoice. We also use Fujitsu ScanSnap to upload paper documents. So like when we have a lot of paper documents at the end of the month, Fujitsu ScanSnap is a great way to process a high volume of transactions in little to no time. Kind of taking this, one step further, HubDoc is amazing as a secure digital filing cabinet for your business. You can get documents in HubDoc in a multitude of different ways, and I'm going to talk about that right now. So if an employee makes a purchase using one of our company credit cards, so it's not an employee expense, they can submit the subsequent document using the HubDoc mobile application, which is available for free on the Apple App Store and Google Play Store, and I'll demonstrate in just a moment. They can also submit a document by sending an email of the receipt or bill to HubDoc's unique intake email. We also use HubDoc to automatically fetch documents from 21 connections, including financial institutions for statements and check images, online vendors for billing and receipts, and utilities and telecom providers for monthly recurring bills. The fetch capability is probably the most interesting thing about HubDoc because it requires zero human interaction. Once it's been set up, you're off to the races. This is really how practices are benefiting from increased automation. And when we have to process a large amount of paper documents, as I mentioned previously, we leverage our Fujitsu ScanSnap integration. So we have the IX500 and the IX100. It's important to note that HubDoc only integrates with Fujitsu ScanSnap Cloud, which means it's only one of those two scanners. But we'll show you how to extract as much value from those scanners as we get into the demo portion. Once the document is in HubDoc, regardless of the way that I got it, whether that was through the mobile device, email, upload, fetch, or the Fujitsu ScanSnap scanner, it'll extract the key data, so including the vendor name, date, and total amount. Once we have that information, because of our integrations to Bill.com and Xero, we can code and post the transactions directly from HubDoc to be paid to Bill.com and to be reconciled to Xero. Second, we use Expensify for expense management and reporting. So this is the flip side of the previous context where an employee was making a purchase using a company credit card. This is in the context of an employee making a purchase with their personal credit card, cash, or debit, and they need to be reimbursed. Employees use the Expensify mobile or web application to upload those documents. And then once they're in Expensify, Expensify will extract the key data using their SmartScan technology. Once the data has been extracted, employees create the expense report and submit it for approve. As administrators, we can set up rules for automatic approvals, reports under $100, for example, or approve reports manually from the mobile web application. Because we're in Canada, we don't use Expensify for reimbursement as it's only available in the United States and Australia. So what we do is we publish reports once they've been approved to Xero before we reimburse and reconcile that transaction. Reports in Xero have all the associated source documents attached, which effectively allows you to audit-proof that client file, or in our case, our business. Third, if we published a bill to be paid to Bill.com, it goes through our custom approval process. So Bill.com allows you to create custom approval processes, which are really awesome and help speed up the payment processing workflow. Bill.com also allows you to pay vendors directly from your bank account. So you can connect your bank account to Bill.com for ePay. This process is really automated and saves us a lot of time. And although Bill.com supports accounts receivable, at the moment, we only use it for accounts payable, but I would imagine that the accounts receivable workflow is just as efficient. Last but not least, every transaction, whether that's flowing through HubDoc, Bill.com, or Expensify, ends up in Xero for reconciliation. The beauty of having an integrated cloud accounting tech stack is that most of the transactions are actually being coded in HubDoc, Expensify, or Bill.com. So that means that matching an incoming transaction to the appropriate transaction on the bank feed for reconciliation is super simple. Not to mention the fact that each reconciled transaction has a source document attached, helping you and helping us audit-proof our business. Now, before we dive into the live demo, just wanted to put up a few important questions that customers have said are important to ask before selecting cloud accounting applications for your workflow. So let's assume that you're in the process of making the shift to the cloud. You've selected your general ledger software, in this context, Xero. How do you go about selecting what are the best apps to use in partnership with Xero? One way to do so, and it's not a question, but I'm going to make mention of it, is to visit the Xero app marketplace. From there, you'll have like a complete list of Xero approved apps. Another question that you should be asking yourself is, how long has the app been around? If you're building a tech stack that you're planning to standardize across all your clients and scale your business on, it's really important to know that that application is here to stay. What do reviews say about the app? So bringing it back to the Xero app marketplace, there are so many reviews available to you for each application from other Xero customers, and it gives you a lot of insight into what is the perception of value for each application. Do they have an accountant partner program? This is interesting because for the most part, everyone that we're talking about today has an accountant partner program. And then from there, what you have available to you are things like free online certification courses, potentially a free account for your practice, and even discounted rates. So working with vendors that have an accountant partner program, you could extract a lot of value as an accounting or bookkeeping firm. Do they have technical support? And is it excellent? So that's something that is often overlooked, but is massively important. Again, if you're planning to standardize a tech stack across all your clients, you want to make sure that the people you're working with on the app side are there to support you. So how do you find this out? Ask your peers, check the reviews, see if there are any trends, positive or negative feedback, so on and so forth. What data is being synced between the accounting platform and the app? And is the sync bidirectional or unidirectional? Earlier, I showed you kind of the benefits of having an integrated tech stack. I think this is really important when you're selecting a cloud accounting application. If it doesn't integrate with your general ledger software, then you're not extracting maximum value. And then how will the app scale with your business needs? That can be looked at in one of two ways. One is volume of transactions, and the other way is volume of clients. You just want to make sure, and this kind of goes hand in hand with question one, you want to make sure that the app has longevity so that you can continue to standardize across your practice. So let's jump into it. So now's the time for the live demo. So I'm going to exit the presentation. And you'll see here I have all the applications set up in my web browser as well as my mobile device. So I can go through each stage in the workflow. So what are those stages? Just to recap, we're going to talk about how we collect financial accounts payable documents using HubDoc and Fujitsu ScanSnap. How we then code and post those documents to Bill.com to be paid and to Xero for reconciliation. And then how we manage expense reports, approvals, and reimbursements using Expensify. So first and foremost, I'm going to log into HubDoc and show you how we automate document collection. So I'm just going to log in here. Awesome. So the first thing you'll notice when you log into HubDoc is the organizations page. It's important to note that this page that you're seeing here is only available to accounting and bookkeeping practices. It provides you a high-level overview of all of the clients associated to that account, the amount of documents that have been collected and that are ready to be reviewed to be posted to Bill.com or to Xero, the status of those connections as well as integrations, and the associated staff members to each client account. So if you're a larger firm, you want to have visibility into who has access into each client account. From the organizations page, you can also quickly add a client account as well as manage all your users. So for us, since we're not an accounting or bookkeeping practice, we wouldn't have visibility into the organizations page. All we would have visibility into is our client account, which is what I'm going to jump into right now. So I'm going to jump into the How I Learned Cloud Bookkeeping client account. Although I would love to jump into HubDoc Inc., I'm fairly certain that if we showed a lot of that information, our CEO wouldn't be very happy with me. So I'm going to avoid that at the moment. So jumping into the How I Learned Cloud Bookkeeping account, this is what a HubDoc client account looks like. Effectively, like I mentioned earlier, it's a digital filing cabinet for all your financial documents. It allows you to get bank statements, bills, receipts, invoices, all in one place automatically. This is what each individual client will have access to. So they'll have access to their unique client account. On the left-hand side, you'll quickly notice folder structure. This is where all the documents live after they've been uploaded or fetched. In the middle, you have your document stream and the different stages in the workflow. And on the right-hand side, you'll have visibility or a preview into the actual document itself. And then if I open the edit data bar, this is where all the information for each document lives. And then this is where, I can code post transactions to Bill.com and Xero. So let's show you how to get documents into HubDoc. First and foremost, I'm going to continue to beat on this drum, but HubDoc's unique value proposition and where it's unique in the market is its ability to automatically fetch bank statements, bills, receipts, and invoices from over 700 financial institutions, utilities, telecom providers, and online vendors. It's as simple as clicking the Add Account button at the middle of your screen and selecting the vendor you'd like to connect to. You can select it from this list of popular connections or search for it in the search bar. So I'm going to start off by connecting to Bank of America. I'm going to put in my login credentials, so an account number, as well as my password. Now that I've set up the connection, HubDoc is going to establish a link. You'll notice that once the link is established, HubDoc is going to start automatically fetching all of the documents associated to that account, in this context, bank statements. So during the initial fetch, HubDoc will go as far back as humanly possible, fetching every bank statement available. And you'll notice right away that all of the key information has been extracted: the vendor name, the date, and the total amount. We talked about the concept of digital filing cabinet. What do you need in a digital filing cabinet? You need folders, and then you need files to be appropriately sorted within those folders. Once HubDoc establishes a connection, it'll automatically create a new folder. So you see here under Bank of America, I have the account number that I entered. Within that account number, I click on it, and then I have access to all the documents within that account. This is really powerful and another area where automation is key. Not only do you not have to collect that document anymore because it flows into HubDoc automatically, you don't have to sort it and organize it, and it's really easy to find on a going forward basis. So I think it's worth it to do that again. So I'm going to go and add another automatic connection. This time I'm going to do something a little bit different. I'm going to do a telecom provider / a vendor. So I'm going to try to connect to Comcast. I'm going to put in my username and password. HubDoc is going to establish the connection. And then you'll notice on the left-hand side, Comcast bills are starting to flow in. This is really, really valuable, especially on a going forward basis. So, The initial fetch is really important because it goes back as far as possible. But where there's a lot of value is that every time a new document becomes available in any of these connections, HubDoc will automatically fetch it and automatically sort it within the appropriate folder, saving you a tremendous amount of time. So that's how you set up an automatic connection and you get documents automatically fetched into HubDoc. Now I'm going to show you other ways in which you can get documents into HubDoc. So if we don't have a connection and you still need the source document, whether that's a printed receipt, whether you received it by email, a bill or an invoice, there are other ways that you can get it, as I mentioned in the workflow slides. One of those ways is that you can upload it directly from your desktop. So it's as simple as dragging and dropping it into the section or clicking on the browsing button and then look for it on your desktop. You can email it in using HubDoc's unique intake email. So each client account has a unique intake email associated to it, which is completely customizable. It's as simple as forwarding emails with attachments into HubDoc. Once the email is in HubDoc, HubDoc will extract the key data and then you can code and post it. And then last but not least, by downloading our free application on the Apple App Store or Google Play Store. And then it's as simple as, and I'm really excited to show this part of the demo. It's as simple as opening the application, logging in. I'm going to do a quick login again. It's okay if you see my password. This is a demo account. Oh, it's not even correct. So that works. Oh. Selecting the client account I'd like to submit a document into. So how I learned cloud bookkeeping. Clicking the photo icon at the bottom right. And then snapping a picture of the receipt. So I'm going to use that photo. And now it should be loading it into HubDoc. So you'll notice here that HubDoc has a new document in the stream. And it tells you right away that it comes from the mobile application. But why hasn't the data been extracted? Well, that's because the document is currently being processed. So you'll notice the little blue icon. That is an indication that the document is being processed. And it usually takes anywhere between now and the next 3 hours for the document to get the data extracted. It's probably a good time for me to go through each tab in the document stream. So we just talked about processing, which is the blue icon, which means that the document has been uploaded and data is waiting to be extracted. What happens once the data is extracted? Then the document ends up in the review tab. Why in the review tab? Because the review tab is there to give you an indication that A, these documents need to be reviewed, to B, be coded and posted into bill.com to be paid, or to be coded and posted into Xero for reconciliation. This is really, from a workflow perspective, where I spend most of my day as HubDoc's bookkeeper, because it gives me a clear indication of all the documents that I need to process for payment processing as well as for reconciliation. The Fail tab gives me visibility into documents where the data failed to be extracted. That could be because no date or vendor name or the total amount wasn't clearly visible or any other reason. So I primarily live in my workflow in the Review and the Fail tab. Once I've gone through each of these sections, I then start to process payments in bill.com and reconcile transactions in Xero. Archive is to indicate when a document has been coded and posted to other cloud accounting platforms, or when a document like a bank statement, for example, which doesn't need to be published over into any other cloud accounting platform, is automatically archived. Because a bank statement doesn't need to be reviewed, doesn't need to be coded, doesn't need to be posted. It's there so that I can validate beginning and ending balances. And then it's also there so that I can audit-proof my business. Last but not least, but one of the most interesting pieces, and I'm going to turn my camera on here, and hopefully that's going to work out well. Hello, everyone, is the Fujitsu ScanSnap scanner. So like I mentioned previously, we have two scanners. We have the IX500 as well as the IX100 that have a direct integration into HubDoc. The IX100 is great for its portability. The IX500 is amazing if you have a high volume of paper documents at the end of the month, quarter, or year. We actually know a lot of accounting and bookkeeping practices that'll set up an IX500 at each of their high volume clients so that they can enable them to become paperless businesses. So just to show you how the IX 500 works, it's as simple as putting in your receipt. So it's in, hitting the scan button, and then as you can see, the document goes through. Something that's awesome is I only have 3 documents here to show you today, but you could do bulk scanning using the IX500, and it's really impressive. We've gone all the way up to including 50 receipts at one time, and I'll show you what that looks like with 3 and kind of give you an indication of the power of this machine. So as you can see, flowing through without a problem. I love this scanner. So I'm going to turn off the camera and show you what that now looks like once it's been scanned and it has come into HubDoc. So I'm just going to share my screen again. Fantastic. Okay, so as I mentioned, I just scanned documents using the IX500, and as you can see, those documents have already flowed into HubDoc. So this was a paper receipt, which is now in HubDoc as a PDF. It could also be converted into a JPEG, whichever is more relevant for your business. It's in the process of being processed, so getting the key data extracted. So I'm going to leave it where it is now and show you what we do with documents after they've been into HubDoc and how do we code and post them into Bill.com for payment processing, as well as Xero for reconciliation. So I'm going to start off with Comcast. As you can see here, I have a bill for $235.82. Although it has the archive check mark, that's fine for now. We're still going to use this document for the purpose of our demo, but more likely than not, this Comcast bill would have the hazard sign here to indicate that it's in the review stage. So the Comcast bill itself, just going to validate that all the information is correct, from the date to the total amount to the vendor name. So Comcast, the date is fine. I'm just going to change the currency because it's a US transaction and we don't really necessarily care about tax. So this is a bill that's to be paid, $235.82. It's an American bill, so we want to be using our Bill.com to process this transaction. You'll notice on the right-hand side, I have a list of all my destinations. If this was a bill that was already paid, I could quickly and easily code and post it to Xero. But since it's a bill that needs to be paid, I will post it to Bill.com. You'll also notice that we have integrations with cloud storage platforms. So not only can you publish these documents to cloud accounting platforms, you could also publish them to cloud storage platforms for additional backups. So like I said, this is a bill that is to be paid, and I'm going to post it to Bill.com. Once I've opened it, I just select the document type, which is a bill. I'll choose the vendor, which is Comcast, what is really great is with these integrations, the information is bidirectional, meaning that if I create a vendor from HubDoc, it'll automatically update itself into Bill.com. If Bill.com has a vendor, it'll be available in HubDoc. Same goes for the account codes. So I'm going to code this transaction. This is a telephone bill, so it's going to be coded as telephone and internet. If you are familiar with tracking classes and use tracking classes as well as locations and departments, these are all sections that you can easily configure when coding the document before publishing it to Bill.com. So I'm just going to go ahead now and click on Publish. Sorry, my internet connection seems to be running a little bit slower. reload the page. Just going to do that one more time really quickly. The magic of a live demo. There we go. So now that document has been published to bill.com because it is to be paid. Once it is in bill.com, I'll then show you how we go about approving that transaction and then conceptually going about to pay that transaction. Now, let's look at a document that has already been paid and that needs to be reconciled. So again, for the purpose of our demo, I'm going to select a document that has been archived, but in the future, I would only be posting transactions that have a hazard sign associated to it, not a green check mark. A green check mark would indicate that it's already been posted or that it's been archived. So Best Buy, I'm going to validate the information, the vendor name, the date, as well as the total amount, HST tax, all makes sense. I'm going to go ahead and configure Xero code and post the transactions. One of the beautiful things about our integration with Xero is not only does it pull all of the vendors from within Xero and the account codes, it also pulls in the tax rates. So for each Xero file that you have, that is going to be pulled in for each HubDoc client account that you have. So seamless integration between the two. I'm going to code this transaction. I'm going to publish it as a purchase. Status is approved. I could also do a draft in case I wanted to add an additional layer of approval. This is actually something that we did early days when I took over the bookkeeping to make sure that I was coding documents correctly. I would publish them as draft, and then a member of our team would go in to ensure that the information was correct before going ahead to reconcile that transaction. I can then choose the contact, like I mentioned previously. All of the vendors in Xero are automatically pulled into HubDoc, and vice versa. If I were to create a new contact in HubDoc, that new contact would create itself in Xero. You'll notice here that I have two line items. Each line item is accurately coded, one for office equipment, one for light, power, and heating. Total amount is $259. I'm going to go ahead and publish that transaction. Now that that transaction is being published, we'll go ahead a little bit later in the demo and show you how we go about approving and processing a payment in bill.com and how we go about reconciling transactions in Xero. So accurately coded transactions in Xero with the source document attached. So since we're still on the track of collecting documents, let's talk about how we collect employee expenses. So I'm just going to jump out here and go back to my mobile device, which again, I am such a huge fan of Expensify's mobile device. The user experience from an employee perspective is quite seamless. All an employee needs to do is open the Expensify app on their mobile device. Similarly to HubDoc, click the camera icon at the bottom right of their screen. Snap a quick pic of a receipt, a purchase that they made using their personal credit card, but business related like meals and entertainment, travel, trade show, so on and so forth. So snapping a pic here. That picture is going to show up in the expenses section. And now SmartScan is doing its thing and it's starting to extract the data. Once that transaction comes in, it's really simple to associate it to an expense report. So you'll notice here, this is a different transaction where the data has already been extracted. All I need to do is come here, and if I want to create a new expense report, click the little plus sign at the top right. Report has been created. Now when I go back to my reports as an employee, I can quickly go ahead and submit any reports that I've created for approval. So here in the context of our demo, and for the sake of time, I'm not going to wait for the data to be extracted. I've already created a How I Learn Cloud Bookkeeping report, assigned 3 expenses to that report. I've submitted that report. It's currently being processed. I'm now going to give you the flip side this is the employee perspective. That took me little to no time. I'm going to show you what it looks like from an administrative perspective when it comes to approving the transactions. So jumping back into the web application, going into the admin section, going into our HubDoc account, view reports. So you see here the two that I've been playing with, but I'm going to jump into the one that we've purpose built for this demo. So the How I Learned Cloud Bookkeeping webinar demo. I'm clicking on this expense report. As you can see, it has the 3 expenses attached to it, and then with the source document and the image attached. What's really cool is notice this little exclamation point. So as I submitted the expense report, I made a drastic modification to the date. Expensify was able to track that modification and flag the administrator before that they approve that transaction. Another thing that's cool is the reason why this is important is because we have a rule in place where if a transaction is older than 90 days, then it falls outside of our reimbursement policy. So if it falls outside of our reimbursement policy, somebody changes the date drastically, like I want to have visibility into that rather than just having a quick approve finger. So Expensify puts in a lot of those fail safes so that I can effectively approve and reimburse and reject expense reports when need be. Mind you, HubDoc staff is awesome. I've never had to reject anything, only approve, which is great. So approving, as you can imagine, is as simple as clicking on Approve and Forward. Approve and Forward means that, like I mentioned previously, because we're in Canada and Expensify Canada doesn't support direct reimbursement from Expensify, what we do is we approve the report, forward it over into Xero, and then once in Xero, we'll complete the reimbursement and the reconciliation process. I can also just as easily reject the report. So reject to employee, which is myself. And then, like I mentioned previously, Expensify gives me the sections that I should be reviewing. So these 3 items are up for review because I've changed the date drastically. Awesome. So that provides you with a high-level overview of Expensify. If you want an Expensify demo or you want to learn more about Expensify, I definitely recommend going on their website. They have a lot of great resources, or getting in touch with a member of their team. I'm sure they'd be happy to provide a demo. So now that we've processed incoming transactions, whether that was for accounts payable through HubDoc and Fujitsu ScanSnap, or for employee expenses through Expensify, these documents and these reports have to go somewhere. So in one of the workflows, I showed you how we published a bill to bill.com to be paid. Let's see what that looks like once I'm in bill.com. So once you log into a Bill.com company account, this is going to be the interface that you're going to see. First and foremost, you're going to have your to-do list, which gives you high-level visibility into tasks that you need to accomplish. There's a lot of tasks that need to be accomplished here, but that is because this is, once again, a demo account. So not to worry. I've been on top of the bookkeeping. So to find out where HubDoc's bill is, as you would imagine, I would go into the payable section. Right, because we only use Bill.com for accounts payable, although they have receivable, and I'm sure it's really awesome. At the moment, we're only in the payable section. I'm going to scroll down into the bills section, which is where I would imagine my HubDoc bill to show up. Just going to do a quick login, timed out. Back into the demo account. Back into the payables in the bill section. It's good. When we do it twice, it's easier to follow along. And you'll notice the first bill in line is a Comcast bill for $235.82, which is the same exact amount as the bill that we coded in HubDoc, accurately coded as telephone and internet. Let's have a look, see what this bill looks like. So the bill has been pushed over into bill.com with the source document attached, as you can see, which is really valuable because when you're processing payments, you want to have visibility into what that payment is for, and you want to have an audit trail to ensure that you could uncover mistakes. For example, if you over or underpaid for something, or there's a vendor contention, so on and so forth. Associated to the bill, you'll notice that you have the status of that bill. If it is unpaid, where it is in the approval process. Right now, it's in the approving process. It's been approved by Jamie McDonald, and it's waiting on approval from Bridget before we can go ahead and pay that transaction. Once it goes through that workflow and the bill has been approved, these are the bills that are to be approved. I can then go ahead and pay the transactions directly from my bank account. Because this is a demo account, obviously we don't have our bank account set up to bill.com. But as you can imagine, it's as simple as clicking pay bill. And then not only do you have a history of where the document came from, you also have the source document attached when you're paying for the bill, which is massively valuable. And then once the bill has been paid, that information is then transferred over into Xero. So I'm just going to log back into Xero. I was timed out there as well, because now we're going to showcase how we go about reconciling transactions that we published over from HubDoc or from Expensify in Xero. So if you remember correctly, the transaction that we processed in HubDoc was a Best Buy bill for a total of $259.87. So I'm going to go ahead and go into Xero and find where HubDoc has published that bill. So in the account section, I'm going to quickly go over into purchases to ensure that the bill was successfully pushed over. Awaiting payment, not necessarily awaiting payment. Best Buy, as you can see here, total amount, the same total amount as in HubDoc, the appropriate account codes, as well as the source document attached. This allows you to really audit-proof your business. So I'm not sure about everyone here who's had the benefit of being able to work with bank feeds, but I was born into a world with bank feeds, and I find that they're massively valuable. Effectively, a bank feed is a real-time list of transactions associated to a company's credit or debit card. So I'm going to jump into the appropriate bank account, or the only bank account that we have set up to this demo account, and take a look at the bank feeds and the corresponding transactions that have been pushed over from HubDoc or Expensify for one-click reconciliation and audit proofing. So on the left-hand side, you have the bank feed, which is a real-time list of all of your transactions. And then on the right-hand side, you have the ability to code a transaction directly from the bank feed. I would say, from what I've heard from a lot of savvy accounting and bookkeeping practices, coding from the bank feed is not a best practice. You're opening yourself up to potential audit case scenarios. That being said, if you're getting the documents in HubDoc and they live in HubDoc, that's perfectly fine as well. Or you'll notice here that we have our Best Buy transaction for $259.87 that is auto-matched to the transaction on the bank feed. So not only has it been accurately coded, not only is a source document attached, it's auto-matched to the bank feed, which enables me to reconcile that transaction in one click. So just going to go ahead and click OK, and it's gone. So for the most part, if this wasn't a HubDoc demo, I would go into HubDoc. I would work my way through all of the transactions in the Review tab. Once I would do so, all of these transactions would then logically auto-match themselves to the transactions on the bank feed. From there, it would allow me to just click OK, just validate that the information is correct and it's matching it to the appropriate transaction. It typically matches it based on total amount first, and then vendor name and date. And then I've effectively completed the bank reconciliation process. And I'm ready to spit out some financial reports for our management team so that they can start to make informed business decisions. Again, that's not a part of my job. We do work with an outsourced bookkeeper and accounting firm to provide advisory services, as well as round out a lot of these functions with payroll, accounts receivable, so on and so forth. But effectively, this is a high-level overview of my workflow and the applications that I use on a daily basis. So bringing it back here, and just to recap, we were able to go over how we got documents into HubDoc, whether we uploaded those documents using the HubDoc mobile device, whether we set up an automatic connection to start fetching documents automatically on a go-forward basis, or using the Fujitsu ScanSnap Scanner IX500 to upload paper documents directly into HubDoc. How to code and then post those transactions from HubDoc into Bill.com for payment processing, or from HubDoc into Xero for bank reconciliation. How to manage employee expenses and expense reports using the Expensify mobile application, and then how to approve and forward those reports into Xero. And at the end of the day, like the value of this workflow is everything flows through into Xero. You have a source document attached to every single transaction, effectively allowing you to audit-proof your business. You're no longer having to deal with paper, and you're no longer having to deal with data entry. So leveraging these technologies really allow you to unlock efficiencies in your workflow, so that you could focus on what's important to you, your firm, and your clients, rather than focusing on document collection, data entry, and kind of the manual grunt work associated to bookkeeping. You could focus your time on higher value activities like things like advisory services, making sense of the financial reports that all of this work works into. So that's it for the demo for now. What we're going to go into now is I have Yusuf and Victoria, who are HubDoc team members in the room, who are going to surface some questions that you may have. And then we're going to use the rest of the webinar for the Q&A portion. So just going to give it some time, and we're going to collect those questions. Again, thanks so much to everyone for joining us today. This experience has been a lot of fun for me, and a really valuable learning experience. As a product marketer, there's nothing better than stepping into your customer's shoes so that you can help to create positioning and messaging and content that hopefully resonates with the audience. I realize that, you know, I am not an accountant, or I am not a bookkeeper. So this process might have a lot of areas that could be improved. And we're really, really open to feedback because we want to get better. So if you do have feedback, please feel free to email me at jeff@hubdoc.com, and happy to try to implement your strategies into our workflow. So the next time that we do this, it's A, much better for us from a bookkeeping perspective, and B, much better for you from a content perspective.
Jeff, that was awesome. So first question. So you went through your workflow step by step. It was pretty in depth. If you were just starting out, what would be your first kind of first point of entry?
Yeah, so as it relates to developing a workflow, to be honest with you, throughout this process, I've been somewhat of an executor. I have noticed areas where we could optimize the workflow, but I've been fortunate in that I've helped create content for webinars where we've really dove deep into this topic. We do have a webinar, a free webinar available on our website that's called Efficient Bookkeeping Workflows. Victoria can hopefully submit that into the chat. But what I've heard thus far, like what is the best way to get started? It's to map out your workflow, draw it out on a piece of paper, on a napkin, whatever, from a high level, and then start to dig deeper over time until you get into that stage where it's like a well-defined checklist where you have the high-level phases, each associated tasks, the task owner, the approximated duration of each task, task dependencies. Again, like it'll take time and it'll take iterations before you get to that endpoint. But if you start small, if you start by drawing it out and work your way from there, I think you're going to be in a really good place. Because just like anything in life, the reality is it's getting started is the hardest thing. But once you get started, it's really easy to get moving.
And a couple of housekeeping questions. Are there going to be slides available? Has this been recorded? And is this a CPE webinar?
So yes to the first two. We will provide you with a recorded version of the webinar as well as the slides post-webinar in an email. That being said, it is not a CPE accredited webinar. That being said, and Youssef can attest to this, that is something that we are looking into for the new year. We want these webinars to provide our customers and just accounting and bookkeeping professionals with the most amount of value possible. So look out for potential CPE accredited webinars in 2018.
Perfect. So we've got a question from a bunch of viewers. Does HubDoc provide the ability to split receipts into multiple line items?
Absolutely. So actually, you know what? I'm going to jump into one of the transactions that I posted in Xero, that Best Buy transaction, because it's a really great example of a transaction that has multiple line items. As you can see here, we have a transaction with 2 individual line items. Obviously, you can go a lot more. On the right-hand side of the Edit Data bar, you can see that I'm clicking on the Edit Line Items tab. You have the ability to modify each line item as well as add new line items, associate appropriate account codes, as well as tax rates to each line item. And then once you publish this document over, the line items will hold within Xero.
Perfect. Question from Carmel. How long does it take to set up everything with HubDoc?
That's a really good question. I'd say that it really depends on your workflow and what you're trying to get out of HubDoc. So what I mean by that is we have quite a bit of customers who use us for fetch capabilities only, meaning that they only use HubDoc to automate bank statement fetching, bill and receipt fetching from one of our 700 automatic connections. From a setup perspective, it's as simple as getting in touch with your clients, getting them to add their login credentials very early on. But once it's done, other than a few housekeeping updates that you should probably do once a month, the system runs itself. As I showed previously, once you've set up your username and password and you've successfully connected for the first time, HubDoc will start to automatically fetch those documents on a going forward basis. That being said, it's always good to ensure that the connections are up and running, that you've answered all personal verification questions, that there aren't any two-factor authentication questions. So that's strictly working with bank statement fetching. If you're looking to use HubDoc across your clients to fetch documents, as well as using it as kind of the central digital filing cabinet for all your financial documents, whether that's paper bills, receipts, invoices that you receive by email, so on and so forth, I'd say that it's going to depend on a per client basis. Some clients are going to be really quick to pick up the process and really into it as well, because they're extracting value from having one place where all their financial documents live. Other clients are going to take a little bit more time. We talked about it, again, I'm going to reference the Efficient Bookkeeping Workflows webinar. We talked about the power of onboarding and how important it is to onboard and to spend a lot of time in the onboarding process. If you spend a lot of time in the onboarding process and the upfront work, you're really going to extract a lot of benefits from it on a going forward basis, which means that the upfront work might take a few days, might take an in-person session or a virtual session with each individual client. But if the session is valuable, your clients are going to be off to the races, and you're not really going to have to worry about it on a going forward basis.
Perfect. So do you back up your documents to cloud storage? If so, what platform do you use? And kind of why? Why back things up to cloud storage?
So I'm going to be completely transparent. We do not back it up to a cloud storage platform. That does not mean that that is the right way to do it. So in technology, we have a saying, if it's not backed up twice, it's not backed up at all. That is where the value of submitting documents, not only to cloud storage platform, but cloud accounting platform, but to a cloud storage platform as well. I'd say that, to be perfectly honest with you, HubDoc is hosted on AWS. I have like 1,000,000% confidence in the security of the data and the information. That being said, just like anything else. Like you're a healthy person, you buy insurance just in case. I'd also back it up on a cloud storage platform just in case. That's the value. And you can use Dropbox, Box, Google Drive, Smart Vault, ShareFile. They all have their own benefits. What's important to do is go and check out their features and see which ones align the most with your practice.
Perfect. So, there's HubDoc, there's Expensify. What are the core differences, and why would I use them together?
Really great question. So, originally, we had been using HubDoc to manage both accounts payable as well as expense reporting. And we found that expense reporting was a huge challenge within HubDoc because the reality of the situation is that we would get all of these individual transactions from employees, but we wouldn't have a really great way to group them into an expense report because that's not the main use case of HubDoc's product. So we identified that inefficiency in our workflow and decided to start using Expensify because of Expensify's ability to create these awesome reports. So these grouping of bills and receipts that employees would incur during travel, during a trade show, so that we can easily have visibility into what they were submitting for approval as well as the reimbursement process. Expensify, that being said, on the flip side, is not built for accounts payable. So each technology, although shares similar feature functionality in its ability to upload documents in a multitude of ways and to extract data, what you do with those documents is very different once they're in there. So with HubDoc, you code and post those transactions to cloud accounting platforms for payment processing and reconciliation. For Expensify, you upload, approve, and reimburse those transactions, and then submit that record to accounting platforms for reconciliation.
Perfect. So once a bill is paid in Bill.com, do you still push it to Xero from Bill.com, or is it automatically? What's the workflow?
You could do both. So there are manual processes that you could ensure that you want to have visibility into each step because that's money coming out of your account, and some people are a little bit more careful with that process. But there's also automatic workflows in which you can publish documents directly after they've been paid. The reason why it's valuable to push those transactions over into Xero, and I'm sure everybody knows this, is because the money is coming out of the account. We want to be able to reconcile that transaction so that we have clear visibility into the who, what, where, and why.
Cool. And we've got a question here from Amandine. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Sorry if I'm not. As a guy named Yusuf, I think I'm giving a pass on that one. So what if an accounting firm doesn't want to have all its clients to have access to HubDoc? How do you recommend they set it up?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So there's a segment of our customer base that integrates their clients into the process. So their clients submit and use HubDoc on a regular basis. But then there's another segment where they use HubDoc for their clients, but also independent from their clients. So when you're setting up a HubDoc client account, you don't have to use your client's email address. You could actually set up an email alias for your firm and set up a bunch of accounts in which no communication will ever take place between HubDoc and your clients. This is especially useful in the context of Fetch. Obviously, you'll need their login credentials to be able to set up those automatic connections. But once you've got that set up, you're good to go on a going forward basis.
Love it. So if one bank login has more than one account, am I able to hide accounts? Do I have control? How does that work?
It's a great question. So when HubDoc establishes the initial connection with your bank, it'll go ahead and fetch documents from every account associated to that login. That being said, once that connection has been established, you can then hide the individual accounts that you no longer want HubDoc to fetch from. So to go over that again, once you set up the connection initially, HubDoc will fetch from all of the accounts, but then once that connection has been established, you can start to hide individual accounts.
Perfect. And if I'm what do you think is a piece of advice for someone looking to get started with any of these applications that perhaps they wouldn't have considered? Like, what's the best way to get started with any of these?
I said it before, and I know it's tough, right? We talk about workflow. Workflow is like a big concept. So I'd say first and foremost, have an understanding of what applications you need, right? Yeah. And what helps you inform that? It's having a detailed workflow. Like, what are the tasks that you need to complete on a recurring basis?
Problems.
And understanding the problems. Like, you need to understand the problems to know what the solutions are. Because if you're just going ahead and purchasing solutions, you might be purchasing solutions to the wrong problems, and they might not be the right fit for your practice or for your clients. I hate to continue beating on this drum, but definitely, we know how important it is, which is why we have a ton of resources around this topic. Workflow, workflow, workflow.
Can you scan multiple receipts as one document, or does each receipt need to be scanned individually? Does HubDoc work with any other scanners other than ScanSnap? I noticed you did send in 3 documents, three receipts through ScanSnap. So how did it work?
So yeah, that's a really, really great question. So first I'll cover the integration. Currently, HubDoc only has a direct integration with Fujitsu ScanSnap Cloud, which means, once again, the IX500 and the IX100. That being said, if you have a scanner that is email enabled, you could set it up to send to scan documents and to send an email version of that document to HubDoc using the unique intake email that we covered during the demo. So that's just to cover the integration portion. As it relates to amount of documents attached to a file that's uploaded into HubDoc. It's a really great question. So we battle tested this integration a few weeks ago to figure out the answer to that question. So one of two things can happen. If I'm connecting 50 documents and I'm processing 50 documents at one time, there's a world in which those 50 documents come over as one transaction into HubDoc. But what we discovered through trial and error is using the ScanSnap Manager, you could actually cut off each individual document. So every time it'll scan a document, it'll create a new transaction in HubDoc. So you could do both. To be perfectly honest with you, I don't necessarily know why you would want 50 documents associated to one transaction. But all that to say is that you can absolutely set up one transaction at a time when you're uploading a large amount of documents.
Okay. Second to last question. How does HubDoc support tax codes?
That's a really good question. So like I mentioned previously, with HubDoc's bidirectional integrations with cloud accounting platforms, we actually pull in the tax codes associated to the client file in Xero or whatever other cloud accounting platform you're using. And that's really where the value of these integrations lie. You have real-time access to the same information in each platform.
Cool. And last question. So let's say I use, perhaps another accounting platform other than Xero. Can I still use these workflows? Can I still use these tools?
Most definitely. Most definitely. So if you're using a tool like QuickBooks Online, just for example, everything applies in this context. So whether you want to use, I'll bring this up again because I think it's valuable. Right? Where you see Xero, you could easily replace that with QuickBooks Online. What I will say, though, is that both applications are uniquely different. And when you're evaluating which application to use, if you're not already a QuickBooks Online or a Xero customer, it's really important, again, to have a clear understanding of the problem so that you could purchase the appropriate solution to that problem, whether that's Xero or whether that's QuickBooks Online.
Yeah, and it's very much like a Coke versus Pepsi, right? You should try both and see what you like. See how the
Absolutely.
taste test
So
goes.
there are some firms
Yeah,
that standardize
yeah,
across their practice, and they use one tech stack across every single
yeah.
client. And there are
Use
some
zero
firms,
for their entire firm.
yeah, or
Yeah,
use Zero for their entire firm. And then there are others who will use Zero for one client, QBO for another client, so on and so forth.
perfect. All right, I'm gonna do one more question here. Uh, what was your favorite app out of all the apps? And you can't say HubDoc.
That's a really tough question. You know what? I'm gonna say Zero. We didn't really get into it. Although I love all of them, by the way, like rewind.
Yeah.
I love all of them. But we didn't get into this because it's not, one of my responsibilities, but financial reporting, Zero is awesome. Honestly, like you can create custom reports, you can customize them to be extremely visually appealing, to surface data in whatever way you want to surface it. And then you could take those reports and you can send them to your clients with notes, with calculations. It's really, really awesome. And I think like what I've learned throughout this experience is so I was stuck in the admin work on a day to day basis. But the real value is what we did with that work, right? With the financial reporting. I didn't do it. We did it with an outsourced accounting firm as well as an outsourced bookkeeping firm. But what they what they brought back to us and the visibility they gave us into our cash flow, into kind of the areas where we were spending more or less money is just super, super powerful. And that is why I have to say Zero.
Awesome. That is the last question.
Awesome. Thanks again so much, everyone, for joining us. I just realized right now that we went a little bit over time, but it's awesome. We still have most of the people still in the room. Thanks for taking this journey with me. Again, open to feedback. Actually, I would love feedback. Please feel free to email me at jeff@hubdoc.com. If you haven't already tweeted, hashtag GGDB. This is your last chance. I'd really appreciate it. Hope you guys have a wonderful day. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon.